Hi, welcome. My name is Vivian. This is Mind Made New with Vivian Hensley. Have you ever looked at your life and just wondered what is happening? That's what we're talking about today. I am so glad that you're here. So, we're talking about this not because something catastrophic has happened necessarily, but mostly because maybe there's a bunch of things happening at once. Maybe everything you planned isn't working out. Maybe your body feels different. Maybe your relationships feel different. Something with your children isn't working out the way you thought it would. Money is uncertain. Your marriage is changing. You're questioning the work that you do. Maybe you've shifted in your life, something has shifted and you don't know what to do about that. You're questioning everything. Maybe you're making good decisions, but you don't know which one is the best case scenario for you. Maybe you've been doing all the things you're supposed to do. You've prayed, you've thought, you've made responsible choices, you've tried changing your thinking, right? And yet you still don't understand what is happening. Today, I want to talk about what we don't, what do we do when we don't know what God is doing? So, quite frankly, when we don't know what life is doing, maybe you thought that you had it all figured out and something has shifted in your life now. And so that's what I want to talk to you about today. Listen, I encounter this quite often in the work that I do. I work with women primarily, but I work with women on changing patterns, right? Patterns that aren't working anymore for us. We look at the thoughts that we're rehearsing, the beliefs underneath, the behaviors that the beliefs are creating, and sometimes the important things we've stopped noticing have become so focused on what's going wrong. So maybe one of the things that you're struggling with right now is that everything you look at looks like it's not working, right? So uncertainty can make us believe that something must be wrong simply because we don't understand it yet. So today I'm going to be talking about the thing that I've learned about this topic, and that is that we aren't always um, assured of the outcome, even though it may make sense to us. And so today we're going to be talking in this episode of Mind Made New about your brain and when we don't know what's going to happen next. A lot of times our body and mind and spirit can kind of freak out in that space. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's start with the brain, okay? The human brain is constantly trying to predict what happens next. It uses previous experiences, memories, patterns, sensory information. Um, it uses expectations to anticipate what is coming. And it's incredibly useful because the brain works in a way that previous experiences, memories, patterns, information help us to make that anticipation. And it's useful, but if we recognize something as dangerous, my brain doesn't need to conduct a committee meeting before I respond, right? If I recognize something as easy for me, I don't need to double check it. This predictive ability can also become very uncomfortable in life when something does not match our prediction. So, for instance, maybe you thought your marriage would look a certain way and it doesn't. Maybe you thought your children would do certain things and they don't. Maybe you thought you would feel better by now and you don't. Maybe you thought you'd have more money or more financial stability at this age, right? That phrase, this age, but you don't. Maybe you thought your relationship would get repair, but it hasn't. I thought if I did all the right things that this thing would work out a little differently, but it hasn't. And there's this gap between what your brain expected and what actually is experiencing and happening in your life. And so when that happens, your brain wants to close that gap, right? It wants to search, figuring out why, what happened, whose fault is it? What did I miss? What should I do? What if this gets worse? And sometimes that search for understanding can become rumination. Do you know what rumination is? Rumination is worrying about something, ruminating on it, thinking about it, overthinking about it, right? That is what rumination is. And so rumination is not good for our brain. It actually wears kind of a track in your brain that you can't seem to get out of when you want to. We're not actually solving the problem anymore when we begin to ruminate. We're cycling around it, right? So that's an important distinction is that problem solving asks, what can I do? But rumination asks, why is this happening over and over and over without producing an actionable answer? So one moves us toward agency, right, and solutions, but the other can keep us trapped in this distress. So if you're a woman of a certain age, right? If you are someone who is struggling with life changing, life expectations, things that did not work out the way you wanted them to, I want you to know that when uncertainty becomes self-blame, that's where we've gotten lost in the weeds. So here's something I see frequently when I work with women, my clients, is when something isn't working, we immediately start looking for evidence that we are the problem. So maybe I didn't work hard enough. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I'm not disciplined enough. Maybe I should have noticed sooner. Perhaps I should exercise more, eat less. Don't say that. Don't think that, right? Maybe I should have done something different 10 years ago. And we begin to kind of heap all of this, um, what's the right word? Condemnation on ourselves, right? And self-reflection can be healthy. But taking responsibility can be healthy. I believe deeply in personal responsibility. But responsibility and condemnation, especially of self, are not the same thing. There's a question I sometimes think is far more useful, and that's than just simply what is wrong with me. Instead, we ask, what is happening here? And that's a totally different question, right? What is happening in my body? What is happening in this relationship? What is happening financially? What is happening neurologically? What am I actually responsible for? And what belongs to someone else? What can I change? These are all questions that start to ruminate, right? Why can't I change this today? I know it's not working. Why can't I change it? That moves, oh my goodness, that moves us from judgment into curiosity. So curiosity gives the brain space to think. So instead of everything's falling apart, try several things feel really uncertain right now, and let's identify them. Instead of I can't handle this, try I don't know how to handle all of this yet. This little word yet matters. It matters. Instead of nothing is working, ask yourself, what is working that I'm no longer noticing? This isn't pretending everything's wonderful. That is not at all what I'm saying. This is not positive thinking. It's accurate thinking. Listen, you don't have to solve everything in one day. And that's what I'm talking to you about. I'm talking to you about when you're overwhelmed. We often try to solve everything simultaneously. The marriage, the money, the kids, our health, our body, our career, our house, our future, our purpose. And then we're shocked when our nervous system feels overloaded. Sometimes we need to shrink the time horizon. Not how am I going to fix my entire life, but what needs my attention right now. There's a biblical principle here that I think is also very psychologically or very, very practical. Jesus talks about not worrying about tomorrow because tomorrow has enough trouble of its own. Whatever religious background you may have, the wisdom in this idea that Jesus brought forth that we cannot take on all the troubles beyond what is right in front of us, right? Your body doesn't have to live 6 months from now. Your brain doesn't have to worry about next Thursday. You can prepare for the future. You can plan, you can save, right? You can do all the things that are needed to be done. You can make all the appointments. You can have all the difficult conversations, but you can only act in the present. Let me say that again. You can make all the plans you want, but you can only act in today, right? So, what does that mean? That means sometimes the healthiest thing that we can say is, I don't need the entire answer today. I just need to take one faithful step. Or if faithful is not the language that resonates for you, you can take the next right step, right? So, what if I really don't know what God is doing? This is where faith enters into the conversation for me, right? I don't always know what God is doing. He's God, and I'm not God. I am merely a person, a woman who has lots of experience with life now at 55 years old, but I don't know everything. So, this is where I have to have that little bit of faith. That is where I have to have that little bit of faith that I can move forward one step at a time. There are stories throughout scripture of people living through enormous periods of uncertainty. David didn't know exactly how his future would unfold while he was running for his life. Couldn't see the outcome when she followed Naomi into an uncertain future. And the disciples certainly didn't understand everything that was happening around them and around Jesus, right? So we have an advantage that they didn't have. We're reading the finished story. We're living in the middle of it. That's an important distinction because we're living in the middle of ours. So maybe that's where some of our anxiety comes from, right? No. Perhaps the anxiety comes from the unknown. We're demanding to know an answer to something that we're in the middle of the chapter, right? We're questioning the pen in the author's hand. And faith, at least for me, isn't that I know exactly how it's all going to work out. It's more like, I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I know how I'm going to walk through it. Listen, I can choose my attitude. I can't choose the things that happen to me. Some of them are definitely preventable, but some things happen whether it's a good day or a bad day, whether you did everything right or you did nothing right. Some things just happen, right? The rain falls on the just and the unjust, the righteous and the unrighteous. So I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I know how I want my walk to look with integrity, with wisdom, with responsibility, with compassion, with courage, with trust. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him and he will make your path straight. This is straight from what God says in Proverbs, which are very, very important ideas and guidelines for life, right? Um, sometimes we can't understand everything. Sometimes trust exists precisely because understanding doesn't. I hope that makes sense. Listen, here's another distinction that can change how we move through uncertainty. Control and agency are not the same thing. You don't control everything that happens as much as we would like to, in theory. You do have agency over your responses, right? You can't control anyone else's choices, but you can control your boundaries. You can choose them, you can enforce them, you can hold them. You can't control whether someone understands you or loves you back, but you can communicate clearly. You can't control everything that happens inside of your family. You can control what happens in your body and how you participate in it. You can seek and care for what your body needs. You can't control the economy or what's going on all around us. But you can make financial decisions today that will help you in the long run. You can't control the entire future, right? But you can decide what you're going to do next. And this is where we reclaim our agency without pretending that we control things that we simply don't control. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a pause practice prayer, or ponder. So, wherever you're at, you can't be driving. That's the only caveat to this. So please pull over, turn off the car, maybe sit in another seat in the car so that you don't kind of attach the idea that you're going to be meditating in your car to the driver's seat. And so, what I want you to do is to pause first. We're going to take in a slow breath in through your nose, out through your mouth, shrugging your shoulders down as you exhale out. Good. Unclench your jaw, right? Unclench your jaw. Notice your feet on the ground and ask yourself, what am I trying to figure out right now that I simply don't have enough information to know yet? Don't solve it. Just notice in your body, in your mind, in your spirit, with your eyes closed, listening to the sound of my voice, pausing. And then I want you to answer this question in your mind. What is yours to control in this situation? Maybe yours is making a phone call, going to the appointment, setting the boundary, applying for the job, having the conversation, going for a walk, getting some sleep, asking for help, making a budget, apologizing, or simply getting through today without making a permanent decision from a temporary emotional state. So choose one action, not 12. You can take the next step. And this is where we pray. So we pause, we practice, and now we pray or ponder. Lord, I don't understand everything that's happening in my life right now. Some things I wish were different. Maybe some things I'm afraid of, some things I can't control. Give me wisdom for what belongs to me. Give me courage to do what I already know I need to do. Thank you, Lord. And so, pondering for this week, what if uncertainty doesn't mean you're lost? What if uncertainty means that you're walking with God through a difficult time because He's with you, even if you can't feel Him or hear Him or see Him? And then asking yourself further, what is the next right thing available to me today? Write it down and then do that. So maybe today you're in one of these seasons where nothing is making sense. Maybe you need information and you don't know what to do next. Maybe you need help. Maybe you need medical care. Maybe you need counseling. Maybe you need financial help. Maybe you need boundaries. Maybe you need rest. Maybe you need to make a difficult decision about a situation. And sometimes you may simply need time before something becomes clear. Maybe you need time. Listen, I'm not trying to spiritualize away real problems. That is not what I'm doing here. What I'm doing is helping you to reframe what you're looking at today into something that's more manageable. We don't have to spiritualize away our problems, but we also don't have to catastrophize our problems either. We can acknowledge that we're struggling. This is hard. I don't understand it. I can still decide how I'm going to respond. And this is where neuroscience, mental health, and faith meet together for me. We calm the body enough to think. We examine the thoughts that we're rehearsing. We challenge the ones that aren't accurate or useful to us, and we take responsibility for what belongs to us. And next, we release what doesn't. So maybe you're holding on to all of these things that don't actually aren't yours. We release the things that don't belong to us. And then we take the next step. And maybe that's what God is walking you into is that next step. Listen, if today's episode, if what I'm talking about is interesting to you, maybe this episode is something that speaks to you. Maybe you're living through an uncertain season. Maybe you know someone else who's living through something uncertain. Sometimes we simply need to know that there's other people alongside us that are also struggling. I don't know exactly how this turns out either, but I don't have to walk it alone. And if you're realizing there's patterns in your thinking, your relationships, or your life that aren't working anymore, that's the kind of work that I do with women specifically, especially. We slow things down. We look underneath the patterns. We begin practicing a different way forward until the next session, and then we practice it some more, right? So listen, I want to talk a little bit about another piece that I hear about all the time in my work with clients, and that's homeostasis. Do you know what that is? Homeostasis is the body's ongoing process of trying to maintain internal stability. So your body is constantly making adjustments, right? Temperature changes, your body responds. Blood sugar changes, your body responds. You get too hot, you start to sweat. You get too cold, you begin to shiver. Your body is continually trying to regulate itself and return to a normal, workable range. But I think there's a useful parallel here when we're talking about our thoughts, our emotions, our habits, our behavioral problems and patterns. Wow. Um, our nervous system tends to prefer what is familiar and predictable, right? And so the familiar does not necessarily mean healthy. Familiar just means I know this, I've been here before, and I know how to function here. That's one of the reasons change can be very uncomfortable. And you can consciously choose, I'm not going to people please anymore. I'm not going to start setting boundaries. I'm going to stop assuming everything's my fault. I'm going to stop responding to conflict the way I've always responded. I'm going to believe something different about myself. And then suddenly everything inside you seems to want to go right back to the old way. Why? Well, because you've practiced the old way. You're really good at it. You've rehearsed it. You've strengthened it. Think about walking across the same piece of ground every single day. Eventually, you create a path, right? If you walk through your backyard every single day across the same patch of grass, eventually you're going to wear a path, right? And then you walk that path for 5 years, let's say, 10 years, 30 years. And now there's a rut, right? There's a rut in the backyard where you've been walking across the yard for the last 10 years. And when you're tired and you're stressed and you're frightened, overwhelmed, rejected, uncertain, where do you think you're most likely to walk? You're going to walk right back into that rut, down the path that you've walked 1,000 times before. Our brains work somewhat like that, generally speaking. Neural pathways are strengthened through repeated activation. Thoughts, emotional responses, behaviors that we have repeatedly practiced can become increasingly automatic. So maybe your pathway sounds like something is wrong. Something bad's going to happen. I need to fix it. It's probably my fault. I need everybody to be okay. I can't disappoint anyone. I need to work harder. I should have figured this out by now. I can't rest until this is resolved. Those thoughts may happen so quickly that you're not even consciously recognizing them anymore. They're running in the background. And this is why simply telling yourself to think positive usually isn't enough. We have to become aware of the pattern of wrong thinking. We have to interrupt the pattern of wrong thinking. And then we have to deliberately practice something different. And this is where neuroplasticity becomes really, really important. The brain is capable of changing in response to experience and repeated practice. We can learn new responses. We can strengthen different patterns, but we have to practice them. And so when that old thought comes, like everything's out of control, I can't win, it's all my fault, we pause and we question the thought. We become aware and curious about what we're thinking about. Is it working for you? Is it helping you? Is it good for you to keep thinking the same thing over and over again when it's not working? So when everything feels out of control, we pause and we question, become curious. Here's another one. I'm failing. Have you ever thought that? I mean, you're two steps ahead in whatever it is you're doing, and yet for some reason you're willing to believe that you're failing at it, right? So, what evidence is there that you're failing? Could it be that you're just struggling? Could it be that you're learning? Could it be that something genuinely difficult is happening? Could it be that maybe you need information or help or rest or boundaries, medical care, or even a different strategy altogether? Do you see now we're reframing it? We're not lying to ourselves. We're not saying, oh, everything's fine. This is not toxic positivity. That's not what we're talking about here. We're asking our brain to develop a more accurate interpretation of what's happening. And then we repeat the new interpretation again and again and again. Because one new thought doesn't automatically or immediately erase a pathway, a rut that we have strengthened for however many years. We have to walk the new path. And at first, it feels completely unnatural. And that's okay. It's okay to feel like something's completely unnatural and still work through it. New does not always feel natural. Sometimes the old pattern actually feels safer because it's familiar. So, this is why I think it's so important to pay attention to what's happening in the back of your mind. What are you repeatedly telling yourself? What conclusion does your mind automatically reach when something goes wrong? Do you have an automatic response when things go awry? And is it a good one? Because mine's not always good. My response is not always good, my first response. What do you believe about yourself when someone is disappointed in you? Right? That's a big question. That's a deep, deep question. What happens internally when you don't know what's coming next? Because until we address the pattern that isn't working, we're very likely going to return to it. Because again, it's the ruts, right? We talked about that. The pathway in the brain has been made and returned to again. And so any behavior that we're exhibiting that is a repeat behavior is actually like a rut in our brain that we have worn by doing it over and over and over again. This is where faith intersects beautifully with neuroscience for me. Romans 12:2 talks about being transformed by the renewing of your mind. I love that language, renewing, not denying, not pretending, not ignoring, renewing, looking at what has been operating in the background and asking, is this true? Is this useful? Is it helpful to me? Is this consistent with who I am becoming? Is there another way to understand what is happening? And then practicing the new way of thinking until the new path becomes easier to walk. So maybe the work during uncertainty isn't figuring out everything that God is doing, right? Maybe part of the work is noticing uncertainty and what it's bringing up in your mind and body and spirit. What old rut am I falling into? What do I automatically believe? What behavior is that belief creating? And is that behavior working for me? Because it may not be. And that's okay to examine your behaviors and start to think, is this working for me? Maybe I'm not able to change everything that's happening around me today. Maybe I can begin by changing the pathway that I automatically travel when life doesn't go to plan. We tend to return to what is familiar. That's just how human beings work. And familiar does not always mean healthy. Familiar doesn't even mean peaceful. It simply means I've been here before and I know this pattern. We've practiced certain thoughts and responses so many times that they have become automatic. Think of like, again, I said this earlier, think of walking the same pathway across your yard over and over again over years and years. There's going to be a rut that's made into your grass. That same patch of grass that you walk every day for 10 years. And so at first, maybe you're walking through tall grass and you're walking exactly the same route every day. Eventually, you create a path through that tall grass. And our brains are similar to that. The more that you do something, the more you are determining a path in your brain. The more frequently we rehearse a particular interpretation or response, the more readily that pattern can be activated again. So maybe yours sounds like, I'm not good enough. I'm going to mess it up. Something bad's going to happen. It always happens. I have to keep everybody happy. I'm responsible for everything. I can't say no. If somebody's upset with me, I've done something wrong. I have to work harder. I'm never going to have enough. These are all lies, first of all. And eventually, you may not even be consciously thinking about these things. It's simply operating in the background. Something happens, your brain reaches for the old pathway. Your body responds, your emotions respond, your behavior follows. And then you look at your life and you wonder, why do I keep ending up here? What is happening? That's why simply telling yourself to stop thinking negatively, it usually doesn't work. We have to become aware of a pattern that we've worn in our brain, that we've created, right? And then we have to identify what we're actually telling ourselves. We have to ask, is this true? Is it useful? Where did I learn this? Why did I learn this? Was it a response to a behavior, right? What behavior does this thought produce? And then we deliberately have to begin practicing something completely different. And reframing is finding a more accurate, adaptive way of interpreting what's happening. So instead of everything feeling like it's out of control, maybe there are things happening that I can't control, but there are things I can influence. Instead of saying to yourself, I don't know what God's doing, so something must be wrong. Maybe we say to ourselves, I don't understand this season yet. I can still make wise choices while I wait for clarity. So, or instead of I'm failing at everything, maybe I'm experiencing difficulties and I'm learning what this season requires from me. Listen, this is one of the places what I do works so well. So well. I'm almost a clinical hypnotherapist. Right now, I'm a certified hypnotherapist. And this in hypnosis is a state of focused attention in which we can intentionally work through thoughts, imagery, expectations, habits, responses that may normally operate automatically. So in my work, we're not trying to erase someone's history or pretending even that everything's okay. We're asking instead, what is the pattern you're running? Is it working for you? Is it helping you achieve the goals you've set? Right? And what would you like to do instead? Because insight is so important. Insight alone doesn't change the automatic response at all, but it makes you aware of it. When you can intellectually understand why you do something, it gives you a little bit more power to shift it into something else. This is where repetition and practice matter. At first, the new pathway feels really weird, unfamiliar. The thought comes back and you're like, wait a minute, I don't want to think that anymore. I don't want to go down that road anymore. The old reaction feels more natural. The old behavior is easier. And that's okay. We're practicing. This is what I'm talking to you about. Notice the thought pattern, interrupt it, reframe it, rehearse it, repeat it. Listen, this is what I do. So if you're interested at all, reach out. Let's get you scheduled. I'm still offering that complimentary first session. 60 to 75 minutes, available on Zoom. It's like a value of 150 bucks. So if you're interested in doing that, reach out to me. This is what I do with people. This part is neuroplasticity. The nervous system is capable of changing with experience and practice. You don't have to keep responding the same way simply because that's how you've always responded. I want to say that again. This is the crux of this. This is the point. You don't have to keep responding the same way simply because that's how you've always done it. And meanwhile, you don't have to understand everything God's doing before you begin changing because there are things within your own sphere that you can change now. So maybe the question isn't only, what are you doing here, God? It's also, what are you showing me that I need to do differently while I'm here? Because sometimes the situation hasn't changed yet, and it may not for a while, but we can change. We can change. Listen, have you ever asked, why can't I just change my mind? Right? And sometimes you can. Sometimes you can change things just because you've decided to. Maybe you've told yourself, I'm not going to worry about this anymore. I'm not going to let everybody else's emotions determine mine anymore. Maybe you've decided, right? You've decided this is it. I'm not doing this anymore. Maybe you've decided I'm not going to overthink anymore. Maybe you've thought I'm done overthinking. I'm done people pleasing. I have boundaries now. Right? Maybe you think I'm going to stop assuming everything's my fault and I'm going to take care of myself now. And then something happens. Somebody gets upset. Something unexpectedly comes up financially, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and your body doesn't feel right. Maybe one of your kids calls or your spouse says something to you. Maybe you don't get the response that you were hoping for. Suddenly you're right back in it. Same thoughts, same emotions, same reaction. And then we add another layer. Why am I still doing this when I know better? And that's exactly what we're talking about today. Because knowing something intellectually and being able to consistently live from that knowledge, they're two different things. I work with women who are often very emotionally intelligent, insightful. They read books, they listen to podcasts, they know their boundaries, they've been through counseling, they know they shouldn't be responsible for everyone. They understand that constantly worrying isn't helping. And they can often tell me exactly what their pattern is. And yet they're still going through it, myself included. So why? Why is changing our mindset actually so hard? And more importantly, how do we start changing it? Listen, your brain is designed to learn. It's important to understand about your brain that your brain learns from repetition. Did you know that? Your brain learns from doing things over and over and over again, the same way. That's how we learn patterns. If you repeatedly think something, feel something, and respond in a particular way, that pattern can become increasingly automatic. And that's useful. Imagine having to consciously relearn how to brush your teeth every morning or how to walk out to the car, right? How to take a shower. Imagine having to learn how to drive every day again and again and again, or how to type on your typewriter, your laptop, your typewriter, your laptop, or to make coffee over and over again. Your brain develops efficiencies. We become very efficient. We also learn emotional and cognitive patterns. Maybe somewhere along the way you learned keep everybody else happy and you'll be safe. Maybe you learned don't upset anyone. Maybe you've learned if there's a problem and you can fix it, you better fix it. Or if somebody's disappointed in me, maybe you've learned it's your fault, not theirs for being disappointed. Maybe you've learned to anticipate danger. Maybe you've learned to stay hyper aware of everybody else's mood. Maybe you've learned that your needs come last. You may not even consciously think these things, but the pattern can still operate in the back of your mind. It doesn't go away. We have to retrain it. And that's what and where the analogy of a pathway becomes helpful. So imagine walking through a field, right? And the first time it's difficult. There's long, tall grass, there's no path, and the grass is tall, there's no trail. But walking the same route repeatedly, and eventually you make yourself a path and keep walking it, and eventually there's a rut. And that's what we're talking about when we discuss learning neural patterns in our brain. Not that there's literally a rut carved into your brain, but a repeated activation strengthens particular networks and makes certain responses easier to access. So when you're stressed, tired, scared, rejected, overwhelmed, or uncertain, your brain tends to reach for what it already knows. And that's why knowing better doesn't automatically mean doing something different. Familiar does not necessarily mean it's healthy. Something can be very dysfunctional and still be familiar. You can be miserable in a particular pattern and still feel strangely uncomfortable when you begin to change it. And that's why someone can finally set a healthy boundary and then feel terrible after. A new pattern or a new behavior simply violated an old prediction. Maybe the old pattern was someone's upset. I fix it, the tension decreases. Now you're practicing. Someone is upset and you remain compassionate. And don't take on that responsibility for something that's not yours. Your brain says, wait, we don't do this. That discomfort doesn't mean your boundary was wrong. It just means you're practicing something unfamiliar. Now bring uncertainty into the equation. You don't know what's happening in your marriage. You can't figure it out. Something's not right. Your children, your health, your finances, your future, your career, your body. Maybe you're going through things in your body that don't make sense. You've gotten a diagnosis or you're going through a change. The brain wants an explanation, right? We want to have a reason. And so for some women, immediately, it's my fault. For some other women, immediately, something terrible is going to happen. I can see it. I can feel it. For some women, you may feel like I need to solve this right now. I need to fix it immediately. And nobody's going to help me. I have to do everything myself. And that's why uncertainty can reactivate our old patterns so quickly. They're not the same. Something that's true is not the same as something that is simply familiar. So listen, why is positive thinking not enough? Why? I wish it were. I'm a very positive person, a Bible believing Christian, conservative in nature. So why? Why does it feel like, even though I know who I am, I have all the labels, maybe I don't understand why I don't think more of myself? Just think positively is what they say, right? Maybe you've spent 30 years like me thinking you're responsible for everybody. You're probably not going to look in the mirror tomorrow morning and say, well, I am free from everyone else's opinions now. And suddenly change 30 years of conditioned behavior. Your brain may say, I don't believe that. An effective reframing needs to be believable. So instead of everything's fine, try everything isn't fine, but I can decide what needs my attention. I don't have to be ruled by the emotions that I feel when something's not going right. Listen, we can say I don't care what everyone thinks. Or we can say other people's opinions do matter, but they don't have to determine my decisions, right? So instead of I'm completely confident, we can say I feel uncertain, but I can still make a thoughtful decision. That's reframing. We're not replacing reality with fantasy. That is not the purpose here. We are creating a more accurate interpretation of reality. Listen, this is what I do in private practice. I work with women. A large part of the people I work with are women, and we slow everything down. Because when somebody says to me, I'm anxious, I'm interested in what's underneath that. What's the thought? What's the expectation? What's the conclusion that she has automatically decided? And what is reinforcing that pattern? Sometimes we discover that the presenting problem isn't actually the problem. Maybe she says, I need more confidence. But underneath it, it's that if she thinks if she disappoints anyone, they're going to not love her. Or maybe she says to me, I can't stop worrying. And underneath that is, if I stop worrying, I'm going to miss something and something terrible will happen. So, what is the belief behind the thought is what we're looking at, right? Maybe you think as a woman, I can set boundaries, but underneath you're afraid that setting a boundary makes you selfish. See, we identify the pattern, we examine whether it's accurate, we notice what happens in our bodies and when we're activated, and we decide what would be a healthier response. And then we practice it over and over and over again. Listen, there's a lot of misconceptions about what I do. Okay. I use practices that people are maybe nervous of, like hypnosis. But really, hypnosis involves focused attention, increased engagement with suggestion and imagery. Think about how frequently you already experience deeply focused states. Maybe you're driving somewhere familiar and suddenly you realize you're almost home. You're completely absorbed in a book or a show. You're watching a movie and you forget that it's not real and you begin reacting emotionally. That is focused attention. So, in therapeutic or coaching oriented meditation and guided imagery, like I do with my clients, we use focused attention intentionally. We identify what the thought is and we change it. So then you can begin rehearsing something different. Imagine encountering disappointment and staying calm. Not just pretending to be calm, but actually feeling calm. Imagine saying no without immediately explaining yourself for 10 minutes. Imagine noticing anxiety without interpreting it as danger. Imagine experiencing conflict while remaining grounded. Imagine responding instead of reacting. We're giving the brain an opportunity to rehearse another response. So, what I do does not magically delete the old pathway. It can help us to work with attention, imagery, expectation, emotional responses, suggestions while practicing the new pathway. And repetition matters. We don't spend the next 50 years walking one path and expect another session, one whole session to completely rewire it, eliminate it, and change it. We're building a new path. So the things that we have to do in the moment as we're becoming curious about our reactions is notice and interrupt it, reframe it, rehearse it, and repeat it. Okay. These are vital to change. Notice the automatic thought, interpret the immediate reaction, reframe the interpretation, and then rehearse the response you want and repeat it again and again and again. Not because you failed, but because repetition is the most important part of learning. So maybe you've spent years walking that same path. It doesn't mean you're condemned to walk it forever. Your brain can learn. Your nervous system can learn. You can become aware of what you're rehearsing. You can challenge thoughts that are not accurate. You can practice different responses. You can ask for help. You can begin changing your reaction in your life. So if you've recognized any of these as your own patterns, if you're realizing, I know what my pattern is, but I can't seem to change it, that's what I do. I work with people. We look underneath the behavior. We identify the patterns. We work with the thoughts. And you don't have to become an entirely different person. So if you'd like to explore working together, reach out to me. My name is Vivian Hensley. This is Mind Made New with Vivian. And if you know any other person that might benefit from this, they keep saying, I know how to do the right thing, but I can't do it. Send her this episode. She may need to hear this. Knowing the beginning practice is going to take, it's going to take practice to build that pathway. So if you're interested, if you'd like to get scheduled, I have room for three more new clients this week. Again, that complimentary first session is available to you. You can schedule at my website, vivianhensley.com. And this is what I do. I work with people to change their minds, things that are not working for them anymore, habits, issues, underlying problems, thought issues, right? I work with all of those things. So how do I work with these patterns in private practice? Well, it's a lot of what I do with women in private practice is working to change things. You don't need to think differently because most of us already know how we should be thinking and acting. The question is, why does something completely different keep happening automatically? And that's what I work on. We slow that process down. We question it and we change our minds. It's an amazing thing. We notice the patterns. We regulate the body. We reframe the thought. We rehearse the new response and we practice it in real life and then we repeat it. So if everything feels out of control, or there's just a few things that you want to shift, reach out. My name's Vivian Hensley. This is Mind Made New, and I am so glad you joined me this afternoon. Have a wonderful rest of your day. God bless you. May God keep you and bless you on your path. I love you, friends.